Discover the path to promotion next.
The program you are about to watch is part of a free series we are making available to you as a gift from Greg Fritz Ministries, entitled Answering the Call. Visit gregfritz.org to download the MP3s and watch the streaming video for free by entering code FREE at checkout. Are you tired of hearing bad news? Tune into the good news of the gospel. Welcome to Good News with Greg Fritz.
Hello, I'm Greg Fritz. Welcome to the Good News program. We are getting to the end of our series, Answering the Call, and I would invite you to get the entire teaching, especially if you like this today. You want to find out where we've been, because we've covered a lot of ground, and we've got it free of charge. Go to my website to the free download section, and you can stream the videos or you can download the audio. We would love for you to get that in your hands. We also have study notes. You want to make sure you download these to go along with it. All of the notes are already taken for you that cover this entire series. There's also a CD series that was the original series that I did on this subject, and it's a little different than the TV series. I did this a few years ago. It's 6 CD messages or MP3s. You can find this on the website. It's called Answering the Call, Straight Talk for Ministers. And this was specifically designed for those who want to go into the ministry. That's your goal, or that's where you think God is leading you. And I believe that'll be a help to you. We are talking about servanthood. And whether you go in full-time ministry or not, you're probably going to be involved in serving in some measure. Even if you just give money, that is a way to serve and to help ministry. So we are looking at the example of Elijah and Elisha. One of the things they said about Elisha later on in his ministry was this. This is King Jehoshaphat was asking. They were about to go and fight an army. Israel and Judah together were going to go fight a war, and they wanted to get the prophet's word on it. And verse 11, this is 2 Kings 3:11. Jehoshaphat said, "Is there no prophet of the Lord here, that we may inquire of the Lord by him?" And so one of the servants of the king of Israel answered and said, "Elisha, the son of Shaphat, is here, who poured water on the hands of Elijah." That's an interesting resume for him to say that this is the guy who served Elijah. That just gives us an understanding that to get where anybody would love to do what Elisha did. He had a miracle ministry. He was world famous. By the time his ministry was over, he did twice as many miracles as Elijah did. And so he was a wonderful prophet in the Old Testament, but he wasn't born that way. He served and moved up the path of promotion step by step. And one of the things he did was serve Elijah. Now, if you're called to ministry, obviously you have a burning desire to preach or go to the nations or plant a church or have a crusade or whatever it is God's called you to do. That desire burns in our hearts, and we want to do that. We want to go and fulfill those visions. But there are many things that probably need to happen first that will prepare you for that moment. And in this case, Elisha served Elijah for years before he became a prophet himself, even though that was his calling. And it wasn't degrading. It wasn't some kind of demotion or humiliation, and we can't see it that way. He was simply serving, walking his calling out step by step. Many times, if God's called you to something supernatural, He'll have you do something very, very natural, very, very ordinary or mundane. If you've heard my story about digging a hole, I dug a hole in Arkansas and had a revelation. I thought, if God's going to call me and get me to Bible school and equip me to preach, and He's going to send me here to dig holes, then I'm going to dig holes for God. I'm going to dig a hole that's going to please the Lord. And I changed my focus to spiritual things, even though I was serving in natural things. And God sees and that He doesn't forget about you. He's not going to send you to the backside of the desert and then forget you're there. He has a plan for you, and He wants to get you where you need to go as quickly as possible. So here's Elijah in 1 Kings 19, verse 19. It says, he departed from there and he found Elisha, who was plowing 12 yoke of oxen, and he threw his mantle on Elisha. Now, I'm just going to tell you right now, if you get involved in ministry, serving in ministry, you're going to see things that remind you that that minister is human, very, very human. They are not special creatures. Preachers are people, and they make mistakes, and they go through life like everyone else. And so if you have too high of an opinion of the ministry and think that they never make mistakes or they never do anything wrong, then you're going to be disappointed. Even the act of serving Elijah was not normal. It wasn't. Let me just show you. So he throws his mantle on Elisha. Evidently that meant something. Today it probably wouldn't mean anything. If you walk by someone and threw your coat on somebody else, they probably wouldn't take that as anything. But Elisha evidently knew what that meant. Elijah's saying, you can come with me. But man, there are conditions on that kind of an invitation. And immediately we see conditions. Elisha said something that was very normal, very expected. He said, you know what, I want to go with you, but I'm going to go tell my family goodbye. And Elijah said, go back again, for what have I done to you? In other words, I don't care. I don't care what you do. I threw my mantle, I gave you an invitation, and you want to help me? Fine. If you don't, fine. And you may find that very common when it comes to ministry. And the reason is because Elijah had a call of God on his life. He had things that had to be done. He was on a mission, and the clock was running. The clock was winding down on his life. So he didn't have time to babysit someone. He didn't have time to go through all the drama and all the emotion. He had to get things done. And this is what happens in ministry. Ministers have to accomplish things. They've got a certain amount of time to do a certain number of things. And they need help. But if the help costs more time and effort than it adds, then it's not going to work for either one of them. And so there's this mutually beneficial trade-off that happens, especially when it's a young minister in training. They need access to the ministry, and the ministry needs help, but they've got to do it in other words, you got to help people the way they want to be helped. You may see a lot of things that need to be done, that ought to be done differently, that should be done, but you have to help in line with what that minister or ministry wants help with. In fact, you may not even get in the area you want in the beginning. You may have to do things that you're not really that interested in. Elisha's great resume was he poured water on the hands of Elijah. Since when did anybody ever really want to do that? To pour water on someone's hands so they can wash their hands. That was a very menial task. It was a very limited task. And yet, that's what Elijah needed at the time. And so, by learning how to serve Elijah and do what needed to be done, Elisha's learning what it is to be a minister. Because ministers do that for the Lord. As a minister, we have to pray to the Lord and say, Lord, what do you need done? And sometimes He's asking us to do things that we're not used to, that we're not really crazy about, that we're not really experienced in. However, that's what needs to be done. So when you're a minister in training, you do that for another ministry. You get involved and say, what do you need done? What can I help you with? How can I help you accomplish your vision? What God has told you to do, whether it's a church or a missions outreach or a ministry like ours. Helpers have to come in and help and kind of sense what needs to be done and be helpful. It's not all about It's not all about you. What if Elisha had said, I'm here to help. What do you need? And Elijah said, well, I just need somebody to pour water on my hands. I need to wash my hands. What if Elisha had said, you're going to have to get somebody else for that. I'm not going to waste my time pouring water out of a pitcher. I mean, anybody can do that. I want to serve God. I want to do something for God. Well, at that moment, that was doing something for God. If God can't expect us to do the menial things, the meaningless things with our heart, with excellence, with zeal, then He's not going to turn over the most important things, the eternal things, the souls of people. I truly believe that servanthood is the pathway to promotion, that we learn how to do the little things when nobody's looking, when nobody cares, when there's no appreciation, maybe not any pay, but we do it from our heart. We do it with all of our might, and as we are able to be trusted in those things, then God's able to open new doors and give us promotion. And believe me, God knows how to promote. We've had people that have volunteered to help us that wanted to go in ministry. Good people. I'm around people in Tulsa, and I remember one person said, I want to help. I want to get involved in your ministry. I said, well, we need help, so that would be fine. And if you'll help us, you can learn what we do, how we do things. These young people who are headed for ministry, they don't know how to do a mailing list or how to do a mail out or how to design a newsletter or how to create a CD product. Or there's so many little things that they don't know that you can learn in an office like ours. And we threw the mantle out there and offered this opportunity for this young person. And I said, you know what? You can come next week. We're going to do a mail out next week, and we need somebody to help stuff envelopes. Put the letter in the envelope and seal it so we can send those off. And they said, well, let me get back to you. And so I saw them about 3 or 4 days later, and I said, well, will you be able to come and help us on next week? And they said, no, I prayed about it, and I just don't feel called to stuff envelopes. I don't feel like that's my calling. And, I didn't argue with them. It's like, what do I have to do with you? I'm busy. I got things to do. I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to try to make this what you want. I'm not going to try to make this your dream job because I don't have time for that. If I were to do that, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm supposed to do. But at the same time, I'm thinking, who feels called to stuff envelopes? Who feels called to dig a hole? I mean, I dug holes and trenches for a couple of years in Arkansas. But who feels called to do that? Who feels called to pour water on somebody's hands, even if it is a famous prophet? Who feels called to do that? I mean, anybody could do that. But that's not the point. The point is we do what there is to do. Oral Roberts certainly didn't feel qualified to build a university, but that's what God wanted him to do. And so that it happens all the time on that level. Ministers that serve God directly, that have their own ministry, they're being asked all the time to do things that they don't want to do. I never imagined that I would preach to a camera. That was never in my thinking. And the door opened and it was like the unction was there, do this. And man, I wasn't comfortable doing that. The camera does not laugh at my jokes. That limits me. I need laughter. I need somebody to smile at me when I'm preaching the Bible. I need somebody to pull on me. And I had none of that. I didn't feel called to do that or qualified to do that any more than 30 years ago I felt called to dig a hole because my boss asked me to dig a hole. And I mean, who feels called to do that? We start where we are and we begin to do what we do. And as we do, then the Lord, He opens the doors. And now it's, I tell you, I can't even tell you what that did for me, because I did a lot of jobs like that. Not just that one job, but a lot of jobs until I really got into full-time ministry, until I was getting my full income from ministry. And so now I can be anywhere, nearly anywhere in the world, and see people doing labor outside, inside, carpets and attics and under the house. And I did all that. There isn't any of that I didn't do. And today I'm glad that I did that. My ministry wasn't formed in some ivory tower somewhere, in some walled off bubble in some sort of theological seminary. It was formed right out there in the real world, right out there where people live. And I worked at a gas station for a while. The Lord led me to do it. And you could not believe the kind of cussing and carrying on and immorality that went on around me all the time. And at the time, I felt like I was being abused. I thought, God, why would you let me go to Bible school and get all sanctified and then put me in a situation like this? My ears are burning. I feel dirty when I come home from work because of what I've heard and seen. And yet, today I'm so glad that I haven't been isolated, but I was exposed to all those things, and I was an influence, and I was able to stand up for truth. And in these different, you don't even know what you need. You don't know the path you need to walk. If you can't ask an Army or a Marine recruit, now that you've signed up for the Marines, how would you like to be trained? Would you like to do physical exercise, or would you prefer to avoid that? Do you see yourself in a leadership role in an office, on the front lines, or in the trenches? What would you like for us to do for you to train you for your future? Well, they don't know what they need. They're going to get yelled at and told to do push-ups and run and get up at dawn and eat breakfast and not eat and stay up all night and put up a tent, sleep in the rain. They have no idea what they need to be a good soldier. And we don't know either. I would have not chosen the path that God put me on to prepare for what I'm doing today, but that wasn't my choice. But my choice was to obey God and say, Lord, whatever you want, I want to do it. Wherever you want me to go, I'll go. And if you don't have that kind of commitment, it's easy to take a shortcut or avoid some things that would help you later on in life. It's not going to be bad for somebody to stuff letters, even if ultimately they want to win the world and go to nations. It's not wrong to pour water on someone's hands, even if later on you're going to be a prophet to the nations. These things happen all the time in the natural, and we shouldn't avoid them in the spirit. Let me just say a word about serving, and then I want to move on to excellence and zeal, because those are very important qualities. But it's possible to be in a position to serve and underdo it. In other words, there are people that have this idea that I'm going to do this job. I know I'm going to have to do this. I've got to go through it, but I'm really not going to put all my effort into it because this isn't my calling, and this is not where I want to be in life. And when my break comes, when my ship comes in, when my name is called, then I'm going to do my best. But until then, I'm going to coast, and I'm going to have to do what I have to do to get through this. That, I would call that underserving, and that attitude is not going to serve you well. We need to serve the Lord with gladness and with zeal. And underserving was a problem. And I'll give you a few examples. One was, remember the king of Israel. They were going to, I believe they were fighting Samaria. And Elisha went to his room, and the king was saying, what do we do? And Elisha said, shoot an arrow out the window. So the king shot an arrow out the window. Prophets are strange. Shoot an arrow out the window. So he shot an arrow out the window. And he said, now take the arrows and beat the ground. And so he took the arrows and he beat the ground. And Elisha was furious. He says, why did you hit the ground 3 times? And he's like, well, you didn't tell me how many times I hit the ground. You just said hit the ground. I hit the ground. He said, no. You should have hit the ground 4 or 5 times. Because if you had, you would have completely destroyed the enemy. And the king was just kind of dumbfounded, like anybody would be. But the point is, he did it half-heartedly. He went through the motions, but he really didn't put any value on it. Didn't mean anything. He said he probably thought, this prophet is so weird. All I want him to do is tell me we're going to win. And okay, I'll shoot the arrow. Okay, I'm going to beat the ground. And if you go through the process of preparation like that, you're just going to cheat yourself. You need to put your whole heart into it. And if it's time to beat the ground, then beat the ground. If you got to dig a hole, dig a big one. If you're going to pour water on someone's hands, pour too much. If you're going to stuff envelopes, be there early and stay late. And do it with all your heart so that you're not guilty of underserving. And it literally did cost Israel because this king underdid it. They didn't totally defeat the enemy, and they could have. They didn't have the victory they would have had he taken it seriously and done it with all of his heart. And this is just an example, but it is a definite Bible example. There's another example that I use in Scripture, and that's the example of John Mark, who went along with Barnabas and Paul in the first missionary journey. And about halfway through or so, John Mark leaves. He went back home. He didn't like it. He didn't want to live that lifestyle. It was too much for him. And so in the next missionary journey, Paul gets with Barnabas and says, hey, let's go do this again. And Barnabas, I think John Mark was his nephew. And he says, well, we need to take John Mark. He's different now. And Paul said, nope, he's not going with me. And so Barnabas said, well, if he's not going, I'm not going. And Paul said, fine, then neither one of you are going, because I'm not going to have that guy go with me again because he cut out on me the last time. And you may think that's harsh, and maybe it was, but the point is, John Mark was not able to make up for that in time to go on that second missionary journey. Had he finished the first one strong, he would have been allowed to go on the second one, no doubt. But because he underdid it, he underserved, he was not able to make up. Now later on in life, he did. But you know, he missed that second missionary journey, and he'll never be able to do that again. It was a moment in time. It was world famous. The world's still in awe of what Paul did on these missionary journeys. And John Mark could have been there, but because he underserved the first time, he didn't get to go on the second one. And so my point is, when somebody underserves, it's very difficult to make up for that. If you underdo it during the preparation time, you may be costing yourself in the long run, and we don't want to do that. On the other hand, there's what I call overserving, being overly zealous. And there are people that do that, and that's very common. And if you're going to go too far one way or the other, you're better off to overserve than underserve. There seems to be no problem with overserving and being overly zealous. Now, I'm not saying you should let someone use you and take advantage of you. You need to put boundaries on your life and know how much you can give. But if we're going to lean one way or the other, especially in the early years, let's decide I'm going to overdo it. I'm going to find out what needs to be done. I'm going to get there early. I'm going to stay late. I'm going to be dependable. I'm going to do things even when I'm not expected. You know, there's a difference between a helper that has to be told every move to make or they don't do anything. You know how much pressure that puts on the leader when somebody's like, okay, I did that and I'm waiting. And what else do I do? There's a difference between that and somebody who tries to find out what needs to happen here. How can I make this happen? And gets in place and helps make things happen without being told. And really that's the goal. That's what you're trying to develop. You're trying to develop that sixth sense where you make things happen. And in the beginning, you're making it happen for another ministry. But if your calling ultimately is to have your own ministry, you're going to be doing this for yourself one day. And you're not going to be trying to please some person. You're going to be doing it for the Lord. And you're going to have to find out what He wants and get it done. And you don't shift gears that quickly. If you do it haphazardly and you do it without excellence in the beginning, chances are it'll be that way when it's yours. So we need to develop these good habits early on and do it as unto the Lord. Even if it's the most mundane things, do it as unto the Lord, knowing that one of these days God's going to entrust me with a ministry, and I want to do this as if I was already there. And that is, to me, that is one of the biggest keys to promotion that there is. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. If you take the lowest seat at the wedding, then it gives opportunity for the Lord to say, come up higher, come to a different level, come to a different place. And that is just, it's a powerful principle that sometimes gets overlooked because the natural world is so ambitious, and they're out for themselves. They think you got to step on people, you got to make it happen, you got to get it yourself, or nobody's going to get it for you. And some of those earthly ambitions, worldly ambitions, are counterproductive in ministry. Well, I'm going to go on to excellence and zeal and promotion in the next few episodes. Hope you enjoyed that. Get all of our teaching. It's all available in the free download section, Answering the Call. Call our helpline, or go to the website and take a look at what we have to offer. We'd love to hear from you today. Be with us on our next episode. Until then, remember this: the good news is so good, the bad news doesn't matter.
Visit gregfritz.org to download the MP3s and watch the streaming video for free by entering code FREE at checkout.
I've got some more good news for you. I want to just let you know that our new book is out. Our partners came together and helped me self-publish 2 books. This is the first one. It's called Living in Stressful Times Without Losing Your Mind, and it is appropriate for the world in which we live. You can read this book and get happy no matter what's going on in the world around you. Us Christians are supposed to be the calm in the midst of the storm. We're supposed to be the answer and not the problem. And this book will show you how to do that. Many of the things we've taught on this program are contained in this book. Some of the series you'll remember: Celebrate Diversity, Growing Toward Greatness, Transformed from the Inside Out, Victorious Living, Carefree Living. All of that is in this book. And it'll just, book form in print is a different way to get the Word of God. And so we've gone to a lot of effort to make this available. Call our ministry today and get your copy. I'm so excited to welcome you to our new office space. We just signed a lease on this space. It will almost double what we have now, and we're going to build a studio here for the Good News program. My office is going to be right over there, and if you look out that window, you can see Oral Roberts University. This is an iconic symbol in Tulsa, and it's the birthplace of the healing ministry here in Tulsa. I'm so glad to be able to expand and bring you here to show you this. We'll show you more in the days and months to come. But thank you so much to my partners and my audience for helping make this possible.